Hello and welcome to Nostalgia vs. Reality, where we take a look at the games that defined my childhood, whether they've held up or not. Adventure games hold a special place in my childhood. The Monkey Island games in particular were extremely important in the development of my sense of humor, and Ron Gilbert's writing of the first two games is still a benchmark by which I judge comedic games writing. Adventure games were one of the first genres of games I ever played after edutainment, and they remain one of my favorite genres to this day. Today, we're looking at the swan song of 2D adventure gaming, Curse of Monkey Island. Released by LucasArts in 1997, this game was one of the last 2D adventure games released before the genre made its transition to 3D with Grim Fandango the following year. However, as most of us know, the adventure genre would more or less go into hibernation after that point, and we wouldn't see many more adventure games until Telltale Games brought them back somewhat recently. Curse of Monkey Island continues to follow the story of Guybrush Threepwood, who now, instead of wanting to become a mighty pirate, is a mighty pirate, at least by his own account. The game begins with you mysteriously being able to escape from the surrealist ending of Monkey Island 2, and conveniently arriving at a battle between the love of your life Elaine and the zombie pirate LeChuck. The game goes on from here, and I won't spoil anything, but the story is as silly and indeed as good as it always has been. Like most traditional point-and-click adventure games, Curse of Monkey Island's gameplay consists purely of wandering around a multitude of environments, talking to people, and solving puzzles. Unlike its predecessors, Curse actually features two different difficulty modes, Normal and Mega Monkey. While the normal difficulty tones down some of the more absurd puzzles that could be found in past Monkey Island games, Mega Monkey leaves them in place. On normal mode, the puzzles presented by Curse of Monkey Island make sense. After two iterations of rubber chicken with a pulley in the middle style puzzles, Curse finally takes a step towards puzzles that would actually make sense in the real world. To be sure, there are still a few puzzles that require pretty large leaps in thought, such as one that requires you to magnetize a pin, put it in a cork, fill a measuring cup with water, and then put the cork with the pin in it in the water to use as a makeshift compass. But these puzzles are few and far in between, and besides, there has to be a reason for you to call the LucasArts tip line. In addition to far easier to understand puzzles, LucasArts also took this opportunity to introduce the new Verb coin from Full Throttle to the Monkey Island series. Although this would be the only time it was used in a Monkey Island game thanks to the introduction of 3D in the next installment, the Verb coin looks great. It looks like a normal pirate coin, and it gives you three different options as to how to interact with the environment. You can either pick things up, you can look at them or examine them, and you can talk to them. Although the talk to option is often used for comedic effect, allowing you to bite or eat things that aren't necessarily other people. While most of the game is a rather standard adventure game, Act 3 changes things up completely, turning the game into a cut-rate version of Sid Meier's Pirates, requiring you to sail around, shoot at other ships, and then board them. After you board the ships, instead of a standard sword-fighting minigame like you would expect from a game of this type, you get insult sword fighting back from the first Monkey Island, except this time, with a twist, all of the insults have to rhyme. This adds a fun new component to the ancient art of insult sword fighting, and the writing in that part is rather good, but the minigame itself that requires you to actually physically move around and shoot the other ships is extremely clunky. However, they've managed to design around this by giving you the option of an easy mode where you only have to hit the other ship once. It's a bit of a cop-out, but it works, even though it still requires you to go back to port and constantly buy new weapons so that you can attack the better ships. We could talk about Curse of Monkey Island's mechanics all day, but LucasArts adventure games have always been far more about the comedic aspect than anything else, And to be sure, Curse of Monkey Island has a ton of fantastic moments thanks to its writing, like the rhyming pirate song and the great insults introduced in the new version of Insult's sword fighting. But there's a certain shine that is missing, likely due to the lack of Ron Gilbert and Tim Schafer's presence on the project. By this point, Ron Gilbert had founded Humongous Entertainment, and Tim Schafer was busy making Grim Fandango. So, instead of feeling like another Monkey Island game from that same team, it feels like a bunch of fans got together and wrote a tribute to Monkey Island. Sure, the writing is great, but it's loaded with references that don't necessarily need to be there. It has a complete cop-out from the ending of Monkey Island 2, especially when you hear what Gilbert wanted to do with a third Monkey Island game. And to put it simply, the writing is absolutely fantastic, and I don't want to degrade the writing that was done here, but it's lacking the same sharp wit that Gilbert was so good at writing, and it suffers for it. Of course, comparing any adventure game's writing to the first two Monkey Island games probably isn't a very fair comparison, and to this day, it really hasn't been matched, even by the games that Gilbert would do later, such as Death Spank and The Cave. So, despite the flaws in its writing, Curse of Monkey Island holds up extremely well, and thanks to the special editions of the first two Monkey Island games that added voice acting, you can easily enjoy and play through the entirety of the first three games without much trouble. However, Curse of Monkey Island can be difficult to get your hands on. If you already have the discs, you're great, you're golden because ScumVM supports it out of the box. But if you don't already own it, there's no way to buy it legally right now, unless you want to buy used copies of the disc off of eBay or Amazon. No digital services are selling it, which is a bit strange considering that it works fine in emulation with ScumVM. But, as we know, all the LucasArts properties are now owned by Disney, and the chances of anything happening with it at this point are rather unlikely. But if you can get your hands on it through methods which I'm not going to explain here, it is absolutely worth a playthrough. You might need a walkthrough handy if you've never played an adventure game before, but try to make your way through as much of it as you can without one.